The town of Craven's Hollow sits cradled in fog, a place where whispers dance on the wind and shadows linger long after sundown. It was once known for the music that spilled from its streets, a symphony of life captured in the strum of guitars, the trill of flutes, the heartbeat of drums. But that was decades ago. Now, silence stretches over the cobblestone alleys, broken only by the occasional creak of swinging shop signs or the mournful toll of the church bell at dusk. One rainy afternoon, Ava stepped into the cluttered warmth of Morrison's Antiques. She was a musician, brimming with passion, but struggling to find inspiration in a town that had forgotten how to sing. And then she saw it, a violin case tucked in the corner, half hidden behind tarnished candlesticks and faded lace. She pulled the case free, its leather warped and cracked from age, and opened it. Inside lay an ebony violin, the wood faintly gleaming despite its layer of dust. Morrison, the shopkeeper, shuffled into view. His expression darkened when he saw what she held. "That violin," he muttered, "has history, not all of it good." Ava asked him about it, but his answers were evasive, shrouded in vague warnings that only deepened her curiosity. She left with the violin, her umbrella trembling in her hand as rain splashed against the cobblestones. That evening, Ava sat in her small apartment overlooking the dim-lit streets. With trembling fingers, she tuned the violin, its strings vibrating with eerie precision. Then she played, and as the first haunting note filled the room, something changed. Visions flickered across her mind, images of a woman in a tattered gown, standing beneath an iron lamppost. The vision dissolved, replaced by another, swirling black waters beneath a stormy sky, then a hand letting go of the violin as it sank into the depths. Ava stopped playing, her chest heaving, her hands shaking. She stood and looked out the window, but there was nothing unusual beyond the mist. Yet she swore she could feel a presence in the room, whispering incomprehensible words she couldn't quite catch. The violin sat motionless on her bed, but it felt alive, as though it were aware of her. Over the following days, Ava couldn't resist its pull. She played it again and again, and with each note the visions grew clearer. She saw flashes of an old theater, its curtains heavy with scarlet velvet filled with glowing lanterns and hushed audiences. She saw the pale woman on stage, bow sweeping across strings while her hands trembled. Her sorrow took shape in Ava's mind, a story of love lost, betrayal, and an unspeakable ending. But it wasn't just visions that haunted Ava anymore. Strange things began happening in her apartment. Mirrors cracked without cause. The faint sobbing of a distant woman echoed at night, and the violin itself seemed to vibrate when she walked past. Once, Ava thought she saw a shadow pass behind her in the mirror, but when she turned, there was nothing but silence. Determined to understand the violin's past, Ava dug into the town's archives. She found an old newspaper article describing a young virtuoso, Eleanor Brecht, who once performed with incredible emotion at the Craven's Hollow Theater. But Eleanor's final performance ended in tragedy. That night, she brought her violin onto stage for one last song, an unspeakably beautiful melody that left the audience in tears. Moments after leaving the stage, she vanished. Witnesses speculated she had thrown herself into the river that edged the town, believing the loss of her lover too much to endure. The violin she'd played was never found. The article ended with a chilling detail. Her haunting melody had been composed in the days leading up to her disappearance, and those who heard it claimed it felt less like music and more like a dreadful plea. Ava knew she had to play it, the plea the article spoke of. Her hands trembled as she lifted the violin to her shoulder. When the first ghostly note rang out, all the lights in her apartment flickered and died. And then the room seemed to dissolve entirely, replaced by Eleanor's stormy shores.
"You've awakened it. The melody isn't mine. It never was. It belongs to the sorrow it carries. And now, it is yours."
Before Ava could ask what she meant, the vision splintered. She woke on the floor of her apartment with the violin lying beside her. But something had changed. When she looked out the window, the fog had thickened, wrapping the town in an otherworldly shroud. Over the coming days, Ava found herself compelled to play the melody again and again, unable to resist its subtle commands. And each time the fog grew heavier, the visions darker, the whispers louder. She began to wonder whether the truth of the violin, and the darkness Eleanor had warned her about, was destined to claim her in the end. Ava found herself consumed by questions. Would the melody grant her answers or consume her entirely? The fog wrapped tighter around Craven's hollow, a silent witness to her relentless pursuit for answers hidden within the haunting notes. Her fingers trembled as she played, each note a step deeper into the unknown, drawing her closer to a revelation or a fate she couldn't escape. Alone in her apartment, Ava pondered the violin's power, its history entwined with Eleanor's tragedy, its melody a seductive force she couldn't resist. With each haunting note, she felt the fabric of her reality shift, the whispers growing louder, the fog pressing in, as if urging her to uncover the truth, or succumb to its sorrowful embrace. She was drawn to the melody, helpless against its pull, knowing it held the key to both her answers and her fears. The question lingered in her mind, echoing through the fog: would the melody grant her answers or consume her entirely?